Welcome to the Grow Your Sales, Grow Your Business podcast presented by the Sales Organization. My name is Andreas and I'll be hosting this 15 to 20 minute podcast once or twice per month. The show will focus on all aspects of sales, business, the customer experience, and be presented in a conversational format, something which is important and I feel sometimes lacking in sales calls. I have over 20 years sales and business experience, from being an entrepreneur in the food services industry in Ireland to working for large and small software and tech companies. These include startups, SMBs, and global corporations across multiple industries and markets. I hope it won't all be myself on the Grow Your Sales, Grow Your Business podcast. We'd love to welcome guests from a variety of areas to fuel our conversations and get different perspectives from their experiences. Initially, though, you'll have to put up with me and my ramblings. With that, I see a lot of discussion online about management styles, sales topics, interviewing, marketing, and the customer experience. There's so much great content out there, especially on LinkedIn. I thought it'd be useful and easier to absorb some of these topics into a podcast, which you can listen to on your way into work or heading back home. I'll offer a very honest and open view on my learnings over the last 20 years. Those of you who know me or have worked with me know that I'm a straight talker. I'm also actively selling at present, working for Big Pond, a digital marketing agency based out of Scotland, building and executing their outbound sales strategy. So I can assure you I'm still very much in the game, using the tools, sales techniques, and methodologies to win business. Selling as well as running your own business takes pure determination and persistence. It takes time to build pipe and grow your business. Some ex-colleagues of mine from Zendesk may remember a slide I created for one of our Friday afternoon huddles. It looked like an optician's eye chart with the word activity from large to small. One of the core ingredients to being successful, both in business and in sales, is activity, activity, activity. So long as you have a clear sales strategy, it will pay off. This reminds me of a BDR with whom I was working. They were just 1 month into the role and relatively new to sales. She had a really strong work ethic and was doing more than required, but felt as though she wasn't getting much in return. This is what I would define as a classic outbound sentiment. As we all know, starting afresh in outbound sales takes time. It takes time to start getting traction and getting calls in the calendar. So I asked her, are you creating new companies in the CRM? Are you adding at least 3 contacts per company? And are you sending out emails and calling those contacts? The answer was, of course, yes, and I reassured her that all this activity would pay off. And sure enough, after about a week, the responses and meetings started to come in. It is a game of numbers, but is also a game of patience and sometimes luck. Which brings me on to today's topic, where we will talk about qualification and asking questions relative to the software and tech space, really establishing, is the juice worth the squeeze? First, what does the word qualify mean? There's plenty of definitions out there, but the two I feel are the most appropriate from a sales perspective are, here's the first one, a condition that must be fulfilled before a right can be acquired, so an official requirement. That's exactly what a good qualification call is about, assessing a prospect's requirements to establish whether or not your solution is adequate and if the conversation should or can go further. The second definition, the action or fact of qualifying or being eligible for something. The word eligible is interesting here. You are ensuring that both your solution and the prospect's needs are a good fit. As far as leads go, we have 2 sources for potential leads. One is inbound, which is usual with a product-led strategy, and the other is outbound, which is more traditional with sales-led strategies. Inbound is more common with out-of-the-box solutions or one-size-fits-all. For example, SurveyMonkey, Delighted, Zendesk, Streak, HubSpot. With these solutions, leads come in via trials, which last from 14 to 30 days, as well as other marketing mechanisms. Outbound is more typical with complex tailored solutions, such as in the ERP, CRM, telco spaces, and adopts a sales-led strategy. Leads are outreached by BDR teams and often account executives, using relative content sourced online or via internal use cases and testimonials. In both cases, marketing does of course play a big element in getting attention and driving interest. So let's look at the difference in how these leads can be qualified. With inbound, your goal is to, as per the definition, understand the requirements and assess the eligibility of your prospect for the solution you are selling. The only means to do this is through questioning. BANT, I feel, is probably one of the most efficient qualification checklists to cover these initial criteria and get your deal qualified. This looks at budget, authority, need, and time frame, the last of which is my favorite. Of course, you don't jump straight into it, but you ask questions around that acronym to understand if there is a conversation to be had. Here are some of the examples of the types of questions you can ask. What has you looking at solutions like ours? Are you using something today? If yes, what's wrong with that? If no, then look at the reason or requirements they have that makes your solution illegible, or why they think it is illegible to solve their problem. Moving on from there, you want to find out more about the contact. Are they a decision maker or the manager with authority and need? Have they explored budgets? And if not, what is their buying process and criteria? Finally, time frame is often the most difficult one to establish. It's one that may result in what we call happy years, as I'll mention a bit in a short while. ASAP, yesterday, tomorrow, etc. is not a time frame. I used to have plenty of these types of conversations, as I'm sure many of you have, and challenged them with, if I send you a service order now, can you sign? And of course they couldn't, but at least that prompted them to give me a much better indication on the actual timeline. Your goal with time frame is to understand what is driving the need and how urgent is it? Is there a deadline that has to be met? How long do they typically take to buy something? Now let's take a look at outbound. Outbound, your prospect does not necessarily have a need, but is open to a conversation. This is key and why these calls have to be more conversational. The goal is to assess how high a priority is the problem your solution can solve. To do this, you really want to get a sense of what prompted them in your outreach to accept the call. I feel this is the most direct and efficient means to getting to the point and starting the conversation. Remember, they've allocated time out of their busy schedule to speak with you, so don't beat around the bush. They know you're selling them something. Then your goal, similarly to an inbound lead, is to get a clear picture of the landscape. What they are using now or doing now that has led to this call, the impact of the current situation and why it needs to be fixed or solved. What they need, that is to say, their shopping list of requirements to assess your solution's eligibility. Please note that there will always be some compromise, so really important to be upfront about what you can and cannot do to assess if there are any deal breakers from the onset. Their ideal landscape and how that benefits both the contact and the wider organization. With complex solutions, the sales cycle is always going to be longer. It's going to require more internal support, orchestrating internal team members to pitch the sale. And of course, education from the salesperson to help the prospect through the customer transition. In both cases, plan your calls to prepare questions, learn about any recent events at the prospect's company, and more importantly, to show them you have done your research. Take a relaxed and conversational approach. No one likes to be sold to or treated like a checklist. People buy people first and then the product or service you are selling. Where you feel there is a deal to be had, always, but always get next steps agreed to on the call. The prospects we speak with are very, very busy, so take the opportunity to get time booked there and then. Failure to do so results in chasing and more than often, no deal. As conversations progress, use MEDDIC, which is an excellent or one of the best qualification checklists, not a sales methodology, I would stress. It helps you collect those vital nuggets of info and plan your questions and calls effectively. It is all about give and take throughout these conversations. Take the info and promise something in return that incentivizes the prospect to continue speaking with you. If you give everything away, you will have failed to demonstrate value and the prospect will have no more need to speak with you. Before we wrap up, we're going to look at red flags, happy years, and what, better time management looks like. So no matter what, no happy years, okay? Ironically, this type of listening is not listening at all. Your mind and wishful thoughts are deafening to what reality is. We've all suffered from this. And the key is to always be qualifying, all right? Happy years or the result of being under pressure can lead to poor time management, as you'll probably dedicate too much time to deals you think are going to happen with people who actually have no intention on buying. So with inbound, you'll often come across people with no business looking at solutions for problems they haven't yet created for themselves. And so that kind of sounds funny, but I've dealt with many inbound leads where they haven't got a website. They're imagining a utopic landscape where they have all these great softwares to cater for the thousands of customers they have and believe they're going to offer the best customer experience. First issue there, you need to have customers first to create a problem. And I would often just kindly advise them to get all that set up. And once all of that's done, to definitely reach back out, and we'd be more than happy to look and have a conversation with them. The other, of course, is people with no authority looking to position something internally. Now, what I mean by that is people who have not been delegated a task from a higher up. So it's somebody relatively low down in the hierarchy who has a problem or thinks that they can position something internally and in a way become a self champion, if you know what I mean. Those deals, trust me, will never go far. If no one has given authority to the person to whom you're speaking with, there is no deal, there is no conversation. With outbound, you'll sometimes come across people who take calls because they just have way too much time on their calendar, or people who take calls who are not clear on what you're selling. This is more typical with complex solutions who have a whole philosophy built around their offering and can sometimes come across as confusing. One example was in my last job, or selling a brand tracker. People would take calls thinking we're a social listening tool. There was definitely nothing unclear about the messaging, but again, you want to qualify these types of leads out from the get-go, unless, of course, in this particular example, a brand tracker was what they required. The other one to look out for, which is applicable to both cases, inbound and outbound, is people with incredibly extended timelines. Really dampens your spirits. They're looking too far ahead of any potential buying cycle, right? So you're having great conversations. They've given you all the meta criteria. You've got a beautiful opportunity. And when you kind of go back to reconfirm timelines, they're talking about 6 months from today, 8 months. I've even had prospects who are talking a year in advance. Now, whilst that may be a real timeline, there's definitely a lack of urgency. And the other thing to be aware of is those people, people that change jobs. So will that person be there in 6 months or 8 months or a year's time? And if not, will the other person take over that agenda or not? So be aware of those things so that you can allocate your time better to managing your pipeline. In saying all of that, though, you never want to underestimate a lead. Okay, you just never know. In one of my earliest trainings back in 2007 at the Golden Pages, where I was a field sales rep, we were always advised, no matter what happens in a call or a meeting, to always ask for references. The time to buy is now, but so is the time to ask questions. The number one in qualifying is to ask the right questions at the right time. I know that sounds obvious, but rather than get despaired because you're speaking to someone who's looking for the wrong solution or has an extended timeline, put on your detective hat and see if there's a more immediate opportunity with another contact at that company. So with that, that covers our first podcast. I'd like to thank you very much for listening. I'd also invite you to check out the website. It's www.thesalesorganization.com. And just before I finish, ABQ, always be qualifying, but always be questioning as well. So thanks a million for listening, and I look forward to the next podcast.